everyone.
We are the Shivers. Ashley and Ellen Shivers.
We are glad you are here today. We would like to share some of our experiences with you. Our stories are of great novels, really. We have very colorful experiences that are quite remarkable. We may not have even been together today, actually, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. To start with, I was born a slave in 1859 in Crocket County, Tennessee. My older brother Tom was born in 1857. After the Civil War, we stayed on the plantation for 3 additional years, and our mother. She soon passed away, and another woman came in. Her name is Joana Joza. She was our adopted mother.
Don't forget about Edmond. Edmond changed her life. Now, we wouldn't have even met if it wasn't for Edmond.
I know. I'm getting to that part. So anyways, around 1860, we met Edmond Smothers. He came to live near us after being purchased from the Smothers plantation in Haywood County, Tennessee. He ran away in 1863 and changed his last name to Harris to avoid being captured. He heard the Union was forming the colored regiments at the Fort Nelson in Woodford, Kentucky. He ran there to enlist. After the war, he came back to us.
Edmond's first wife and 3 children had been sold into slavery, again in 1859, right before the Civil War. And Charlotte, she died in 1865 when her children were young.
I know it must have been very hard for him to lose track of his children.
Edmond had been moved from the plantation in Haywood County to Crocket County in Tennessee. Ashley's stepbrothers and sisters found them after Edmond's death. They had kept their second slave owner's name because they never knew their father as a free man with a free name.
After the war, Edmond returned and started a new family with us.
He even had a daughter with his second wife. Her name was Mary.
During the war, he heard about the rich farmland in Wisconsin and about the free black settlements there. He felt like that's where our home should be. So we moved and headed for Wisconsin. Thomas, Mary, and I were kids at the time. We did not have any idea of what to expect.
It took Ashley's family a very long time to get there. Almost 2 years, if not more. You ask why? They walked. They walked all the way from Tennessee to Wisconsin. Now I suppose you stopped along the way, didn't you?
Absolutely. We had to rest and find work. Thomas wanted us to have our own farm in Wisconsin. So we continued to walk and walk.
My family, the Waldons, were already settled in Cheyenne Valley, just outside of Hillsboro in Vernon County. They came to Cheyenne Valley in 1854, along with several other families who were also people of color. Actually, they were tri-racial families, black, white, and Native American. These families traveled all the way from North Carolina to Indiana to escape black codes and the Fugitive Slave Act. My grandparents were Micaiah and mourning rebels. Even though they were free, they risked being sold into slavery if they stayed in North Carolina. Unfortunately, they faced the same problem when they got to Indiana, the dangers of being sold. So they, along with other families, had to leave again. Wisconsin was the ideal location for the move because the state had rejected the Fugitive Slave Act. They didn't have to leave anymore. They could settle without fear.
A year or so after we settled in the valley, other large families moved into the valley. One of them was the Bass family. It wasn't long before I started seeing Rebecca Bass. Her family also came from North Carolina and Georgia. We got married in 1882. The marriage lasted about 8 years, and we had 3 children together. But things didn't work out for us. We separated in 1890 and officially divorced in 1892.
That was a difficult time, not only because of the divorce, but Edmond died in 1881, right before they bought the farm.
Our stepmother died too. If that wasn't hard enough, we had to struggle to keep the farm. Edmond had willed the farm to Mary, but she almost lost it because the farm was heavy in debt. Thankfully, Tom paid the debts off and purchased the farm so it could stay in the family.
It's too bad Edmond didn't live longer, so he could see what became of his dream farm here.
Thomas would have made it been wonderful, and Edmond would have been proud.
Ashley didn't really like farming. Now, he helped maintain it, but he really didn't like it, did you?
But Thomas loved it. He had creative plans for the farm. He and his son Alger both loved farming. Thomas eventually ended up owning the largest black-owned farm in Wisconsin, 250 acres. He sure knew a lot. Everyone in the valley looked up to him because he knew so much about farming. Even people from other parts of the state came to ask for his advice.
Alger Shivers, Thomas's son, was a very progressive architect. Alger was a pioneer in the building of round barns. He actually built most of the round barns in the southwestern Wisconsin. They were quite popular.
When I moved to La Crosse with my family, I worked as an apprentice at the Moss & Son barbershop. Zacharias Lewis Moss was my mentor. It was then that I realized I preferred being a barber to being a farmer. Once I finished my apprenticeship in 1890, Rebecca and I had our 3rd child. But this didn't save our marriage though. Within a year of Claude's birth, we were divorced. I returned to the valley in the spring to help with the farming. And that's when I started to see Ellen.
My family, the Waldons, they were a strong family in the valley.
My divorce with Rebecca was finalized in 1892, and she soon remarried. Ellen and I were married in 1893. We decided to leave Cheyenne Valley permanently and move to La Crosse so I can start my own barbershop business here.
We've made a good life for ourselves and our family. The barbershop business has been successful, thankfully. And we were able to have 5 children of our own between 1894 and 1906. But it wasn't all happiness. We lost our youngest, John Ashley, to pneumonia when he was just 8 months old. He's buried in Oak Grove Cemetery. In spite of our tragedy, the house was full of the sound of children, ours and Ashley's from his first marriage. They sometimes spent time with us too. We wanted to have a welcoming home for all the children as they were growing up.
For the most part, our barbershops were in our home. Can you imagine trying to raise children with men coming and going for haircuts and shaves? That's why we always try to own or rent large houses with a separate space between the living area and the barbershop. We were also able to open up a section of our home as boarding rooms for visitors and boarders.
Even though there were no legal restrictions about people of color staying in hotels or eating in restaurants, there was a way of people letting you know you were not welcome. That's why we opened up our house to people who needed a place to stay. After the children were older, we changed our living space. This happened around 1904.
I moved my barbershop to 411 Main Street downtown. We continued to live on the north side at 415 Mill Road. Now it's called Copeland Avenue.
I opened a cafe in the space that had been used as the shop. It was a relief. There wasn't a steady stream of men in the house anymore. I was able to only serve breakfast and lunch to our boarders and visitors.
I didn't keep regular hours as a barber when I had my shop in the house. I took care of customers whenever they came to the door. Of course, all that changed when I moved my shop out of the house.
You know, black barbers only cut and shaved white men's hair. Officially, that is.
White men didn't want to do business where black men had their beards or hair cut or trimmed. They gave all kinds of excuses. But we all knew why. No one wanted to risk mixing of the races.
Of course, they didn't want to cut women's hair either. Ashley and the other black barbers in town, they did service black customers though. After hours, in their own homes.
We had comfortable lives in La Crosse, so we were able to extend ourselves into the community.
I was active in the Home Literary and Debate Society. We were a group of women of color who helped other people of color in the community. We provided them with educational and social services, and we also offered help in finding housing in the area. We also organized the annual August Ball. We like to call it the Emancipation Ball. This was a very important event in our community. It was a celebration of the liberation of enslaved people in Haiti, and later in this country. This was held in Levy Park. Now you call it Riverside.
I made sure that they knew how to read and write so they can get their state barbering license and create their own barbershop businesses.
Several children moved to Minneapolis and started families. Spencer continued the tradition of barbering and set up a shop there. Robert and Esther also moved to Minneapolis. Theodore continued the barber tradition in Sparta with another group of uncles in the Waldon barbershop. Ashley and Rebecca's children led productive lives also. In college, Claude was a graduate lab assistant. He also served in World War II. Oscar and Frank eventually moved to Madison and had service careers there. Nettie was a wanderlust. She lived in several states in the Midwest, finally settling in California. Ashley and Ellen were good parents and role models to their children and their extended family. They led very productive lives in La Crosse. They eventually moved to Madison, where they remained for the rest of their lives. Ashley passed away in 1937. Ellen passed away the following year, 1938. Ashley is buried in Forest Cemetery in Hillsboro, just outside Cheyenne Valley. Ellen was laid to rest near her family in Forest Burr Cemetery, also in Cheyenne Valley.